In a land of myth and a time of magic, the destiny of a great kingdom rests on the shoulders of a young boy. His name, Merlin.
Good morning. Such words are read by Kilgara, the great dragon, at the beginning of each episode of Merlin, one of my favourite TV viewings, again showing on Pick 24. Whilst the Magi could not quite determine the future significance of the birth of Jesus, his destiny, I imagine that something of the words of Kilgara were hanging around as they thought about making their journey to the manger. Certainly, Palestine was a land of cultural myths of all kinds, and maybe some stories of magic, who knows. There is a tradition that the Magi had magical powers, that they were astrologers. When hearing the story of the visit of the Magi in Matthew, we must remember it is a story which has been embellished through the imagination of its writer. What the Magi sensed was the birth of this child was of considerable significance. Perhaps they did not know the destiny of the great kingdom, the kingdom of God, laid upon the shoulders of this baby. Stories, myths, and legends help us make sense of our lives. Those of you who watch the TV soaps, which are our modern myths on TV, will know that they are ordinary stories of ordinary folk. Or maybe you're just an avid listener of Vic Archers. I wonder why so many people watch and listen to them. Well, my theory is that they help us in an oblique way to make choices and decisions about what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. It's like we think, well, I wouldn't have gone about it in that way. I wouldn't have spoken to him like that. I wouldn't have made that decision. But of course, when we go to the Bible, we're always confronted with the big story of God's salvation for all of humankind. So for a few moments, I want to draw upon these three elements of this story of the journey of the Magi on this Epiphany Eve, which tell us something of God's salvation. That is his big story for us. The first element is about wonder. I love the chorus of the carol of We Three Kings of Orient Are. It begins, "Star of wonder, star of light." How easy this year it is for us to miss the wonder engendered by this amazingly fascinating story. The mysterious Magi from the east, the anomalous star, coincident with the birth of a king, the threat to life of an infant hero, the warning that comes in a dream. These are the things to delight and enchant, to entertain and create wonder. To wonder we need, however, to stop and focus, to ponder the great mystery which again unfolds before our very eyes. The mystery of God pulls us to the heart of faith enshrined in this beautiful story. Emmanuel, God with us, says Matthew. From the beginning of all creation, this baby is born to a very ordinary woman, and to all intents and purposes out of wedlock, an illegitimate child, no less. God is clearly identified with the marginalized and the ordinary. Our wonder focuses our gaze on such vulnerability and humility. It's breathtaking. The second element of the story is to do with the relationship between birth and death. And T.S. Eliot, in his famous poem, The Journey of the Magi, helps us to see clearly this birth connected to a death. All this was a long time ago, I remember, and I would do it again, but set down, were we led all that way for birth or death? There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence and no doubt. I had seen birth and death, but had thought they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. A birth like death. Earlier in the poem, Eliot talks of 3 trees on the low skies and 6 hands at an open door dicing for pieces of silver. The 3 trees are the 3 crosses of the crucifixion. The dicing for silver refers to the soldiers casting lots for Jesus' garments and Judas's betrayal of Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Eliot had certainly got it right. Matthew wants us to know something of the destiny of this Christ child, foreshadowed right at the beginning of his birth. Where is this child who has been born King of the Jews? This, you will remember, King of the Jews was the title which hung above Jesus' cross. There is a gathering of Jewish leaders, and there is the decision of the ruling authority, the legitimate leader Herod, to do away with Jesus. All parallels. My third element is to do with what kind of world this baby Jesus was being born into. Matthew gives us the clue in that the background to this baby birth is one in which people are not overjoyed by his birth, but rather the opposite. When Herod the king heard the news, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Jesus is already a threat to the authorities. Indeed, if we read on a bit further in Matthew, at the beginning of chapter 2 there, we are faced with the unthinkable and vicious killing of innocent children, of which Jesus is expected to be among them. Wonder, birth and death, and a world in chaos. How relevant is this story to our situation today? And what hints to our destiny as his disciples? Does this story have any good news to give us? I wonder constantly at the miracles of life around me. I wonder right now at the skill and diligence of those who have worked tirelessly to produce a vaccine for the current COVID-19 pandemic. I wonder at God's hand deftly creating a new beginning for us and for many people, and providing such gifts of love and compassion throughout this pandemic. For us, we continue to wonder at God working his purposes out among us. Births and deaths are part of the rhythm of our daily lives. There have been far too many deaths over the past year, and we have lost 3 or 4 really close personal friends, and so much suffering that has accompanied them. On the other hand, the miracle of new life is a daily happening as babies are born into our world with all the joy and suffering very often that comes with a birth. God with us is a part of our stories of life and death. Matthew and Eliot remind us that birth and death are inextricably linked and alert us constantly to the cost of our discipleship. We await the new birth of a Brexit Britain, and sadly for many of us, the death of European cooperation at this level. We look anxiously for new lives which this vaccine can bring. A glance at the daily news spells out the nature of the world's chaos, with wars and killings, of exploitations of young and old, of domestic violence, of political prisoners, of asylum camps and refugees, those suffering from all kinds of trouble in terms of unemployment and illness, physical, mental, and spiritual. God's message in Matthew on this Epiphany Eve is clear. The Christ child in Bethlehem, worshipped and wondered at by the wise men from the east, whose very existence is threatening and threatened from the word go, is no other than God among us, God with us, who totally shares the destinies of each human lot in sickness and in health and in death, and continues to reveal, and that's what Epiphany means, to show forth the mystery of his presence, if we keep our kingdom eyes and our kingdom hearts open enough. Alas, there is none of Merlin's magic, but rather a world and lives shot through with the mystery, miracle, and grandeur of God, who invites you and I to share his destiny of losing life in order to gain it. Hope you enjoy your Epiphany. Goodbye.